Hello, I'm Todd Spatafor, and this is another spectacular thing. About 4 years ago, we created a Raspberry Pi 4 NAS using the Argon Eon case. And a few weeks ago, we updated the Argon Eon with some questions from the viewers. Today, we're going to look at the Raspberry Pi 5 NAS using the RadXA Penta hat that uses PCIe to communicate with the Raspberry Pi. This should greatly speed up the performance within the Raspberry Pi 5. But we'll look at performance next week. Today, let's look at the build. To begin the build, we add in the bottom screws, the support brackets for the Raspberry Pi to the hat. Now we had to trim some of the heatsink here, and you can see it better in a little video that I've got right here, just to make it room for the power adapter. The power plug needed some of the heatsink to be removed, so I removed that. Next, we add in the hat, the PCIe connector here, and then we connect it to the I/O shield, and then we screw it into the risers. Next, we put on the hard drives and we screw them in place so that they're nice and stable. And that's it. Next, we want to update the firmware so that it boots using PCIe enabled. So we do that sudo vim boot firmware config.txt. Then we scroll all the way to the bottom. I said scroll all the way to the bottom, Todd. Thank you. And we add in dtparam PCIe X1 and dtparam PCIe X Gen 3. Gen 3 is a little bit controversial because it might not be stable, but it's been stable in my experience, so I use Gen 3. You can leave this line off if you're worried about stability. Okay, with that finished, next we want to sudo apt install mdadm NFS kernel server, and this command will do that. Next, we want to list the block so we can see the drives that we have, and you can see we have A, B, C, and D listed here, each of them 2 terabytes in size. So next we want to format a partition for create a partition for each of those, and you can see we've created SDA1, B, and C, and D1 right here. Okay, next we're going to build the array with mdadm create, just like we did in the previous video, and we're going to cat proc mdstat so we can see the progress of our build. Now this is going to take about 8 hours to finish. Obviously I'm not going to make you wait, and I'm not going to fast forward through that. I'm going to stop the recording, and then we will magically be 8 hours into the future. So stick around. Okay, it's the next day. Let's check let's create our file system, makefs ext4 for dev md0. Remember, we want to do the drive and not the individual drives. We want to do the array and not the individual drives. Next, we want to create the location where we're going to mount the drive. So we create a directory in mount raid. And then we want to test mounting the drive. So we do sudo mount dev/md0/mount/raid. And we check to make sure that it's done with df-h, and there on the bottom line is dev md0 mount raid with 4 terabytes free. Now we're going to unmount this so that we can do a more permanent solution with, we're going to check the block ID to get the UUID of the drive. And there's the UUID, so we want to copy that. And then we want to edit FS tab. And at the bottom, we want to add in our drive with the command on the screen. Next, we want to reload the daemon and then we want to mount, and you can see here df-h, it's mounted the drive. Next, we want to make sure that the drive survives a reboot through mdadm and this T command. And we want to update the initial RAM FS with this command. Okay, and finally we want to make a directory for our share on the RAID drive. And then we want to update the exports so we can export this share for other computers to get access to with this command here. And next we want to restart NFS. Now on my local machine, I create a folder for the share to be mounted on my local computer. I'm going to do mount Pi5 NAS. And then I want to mount this drive. Its type is NFS. Put in the IP address and the mount point, followed by the local mount point. And then if I do df-h, you can see on the last line we've successfully mounted that share. And let's try test copying a file, a 2 GB file, just a small one, just to test to make sure everything works. So that's the Raspberry Pi 5 NAS with PCIe storage and RAID 10 array for speed and redundancy. NFS export was ready for network access, and we tested it, and it's working. But how well was it working? Well, in the next video, we're going to cover the benchmarks, the test between how much faster one was over the other. And you won't believe how much faster one was over the other. So please subscribe and ring the bell so that you'll be notified when that video comes out. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.